Welcome back to Red Education. We're going over chapter 1.6. This is part 2. This whole video is going to talk about reading online. Let's get right into it. Okay, we'll be covering bond line structures. So let me first start off with a basic Lewis diagram. In this Lewis diagram, we have 3 carbons surrounded by hydrogens. As we know, carbons are tetravalent, so it must always be surrounded by 4 bonds. So let's make a Lewis or bond line diagram of this. So let's call this carbon that I just highlighted green carbon 1, pink carbon 2, red carbon 3. So for beginners, I always recommend that we start with making dots. So we know carbon 1 will be here, carbon 2 we'll put here, and carbon 3 will be put here. So why did I recommend doing dots? In a bond line diagram, every endpoint and corner represents a carbon. So if I were to connect these dots, here we can see one endpoint, one corner, and a second endpoint. So we have 3 endpoints and corners. So what does that represent? 3 carbons. Now, the holy grail of bond line structures are that hydrogens are implicit. You do not need to show the hydrogens, and it is a blessing when you have huge diagrams that have hundreds of hydrogens and you don't have to show it. But for learning purposes, I will show them real quick. We will have a hydrogen here, hydrogen here, hydrogen here. We have our 2 hydrogens here, and then our 3 hydrogens here. This is pretty much the bond line structure. However, I'll give you another example. Draw it. There will be some parts you probably won't fully understand. So here's our Lewis bond structure. It looks extremely complicated, but it really isn't. In this example, I left the hydrogens implicit. However, remember, in Lewis, you must show all the hydrogens. So I am incorrect on this one, but for simplicity, I show them implicit. So for sakes of drawing bond line, if you have a Lewis, I would always recommend either starting in 2 different places. Either you start with the most left carbon, and like you're reading a book, go rightwards and fill in the blanks. But that can be more cumbersome if I were to keep going, up and down, left and right, etc. So what I always like to do is start in a cyclo. You haven't learned the IUPAC names, however, a cyclo or any ring configuration. So this is a cyclo, and this is a cyclo. This way, it becomes more easier to digest. I'm going to start with this left cyclo in the top left corner. So first I'm going to draw the dots and then show you, once you get more comfortable, what I usually do. So I know there's a carbon here, carbon here, carbon here, carbon here. I would connect them. Now I have my cyclobutane. However, if we notice, there are 2 lines. What that must depict is we have 2 lines here. And what does that also mean about our carbon here? If we notice here, there's 4 bonds to this carbon. This carbon has no hydrogens, period. However, this carbon here has 3 bonds. Therefore, if I was showing on this Lewis diagram hydrogen, there would be one here. On the bond line, it's implicit. However, it would be here. Now, continuing on from that, I can just visually see that the left side has less carbon. So I'm just going to go there. I'm going to draw it in pink. We'll have boom and boom. Now if we continue to the right, I'll also continue in pink. Boom. Another note. Remember, this one will have no implicit hydrogen. This one will have 3, this one will have 3, this one will have 1. This one will have no implicit hydrogen. Carbons are tetravalent. Now, a hard part that you may not have understand, I try to give a hint, but carbons that are in triple bond must be drawn straight. So I would recommend like this. Now some professors will just draw it one straight line and add those. Either or is correct, and your teacher should not deduct points from it. However, at this point, you might be getting, a little scared. So at this point, to recommend to make sure you're doing it correct, count how many carbons you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we have the carbon before the triple bond, carbon after the triple bond, and this carbon will be this carbon. Now we just said this carbon is this carbon, so we know it goes up here, and we start making a 6-ring carbon ring. And just from this, you have achieved the bond line. If you understand what I just showed you, your bond line will be successful every time. So now let me just recover some of the rules. So we must remember that every corner or endpoint represents a carbon. So for example, boom, boom. This will have 3 carbons, 4 carbons, 5 carbons, 6 carbons, 7 carbons, 8 carbons, etc. The next one, double bonds are represented in 2 lines. So if we had a Lewis diagram like this, we must understand it would be like this. And triple bonds are represented in 3 lines and are always linear. This is wrong. You will not get points for this at all. Another fundamental part about reading bond line structures is really knowing how many carbons and hydrogen atoms are present. So for example, if I were to give you these 2 structures, would you be able to tell me how many carbon and how many hydrogens they are? So you should have said for the left one, if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 carbon. And then for hydrogen, you should know that there's 3 here, none in this central carbon, because there's 4, and as we know it's tetravalent carbon is. This one has another 3, 2 here, and another 3. So that'll be 16 hydrogens. And the next one, if we count again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 carbon. Hydrogen. Let us do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Is 18 the correct answer though? Yes, it is. Because down here, these carbons are 4 with the double bond. It is so important that you read these structures correctly. I recommend you just Googling some Lewis diagrams. making carbon bond line structures, and then Googling it. But I'll provide some examples and more practice questions in a video later. Thank you for joining part 2, reading bond line structures. Tune in for part 3. Reading bond lines. Tune in for part 3, and hope to see you there. Bye-bye.